Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
All right,
hey,
everybody.
guys.
So today we don't have our usual co-host, Matthew, but our producer, Alex, will be co-hosting with me today. Alex, why don't you tell the lovely people what we're going to be talking about?
So, first of all, let's start with, you all see my edits, but you rarely see me. And I started as a guest, and it's actually nice to be a guest once again, because this is a topic that I feel pretty strongly about, and that is universal basic income, specifically here in the U.S.
I'm assuming that when you say that you feel very strongly about it, that you are in favor.
Absolute favor.
Okay.
Yes, have been for quite some time.
Because I don't think there's too many people who have strong feelings about UBI who aren't in favor of it.
This is true. Yeah.
So I am also strongly in favor of UBI. And I guess beyond just like the fact that it's called universal basic income, we should probably explain the idea of it. And that is essentially the government would provide almost like an allowance to all citizens. I would assume it's only citizens, but I could be wrong on that. And there's also probably different ways of doing it. But to all citizens, regardless, whether or not they work.
Yeah. So let me give you the most modern definition.
Sure.
And it kind of sets the stage, but it also covers the overall situation. So UBI, it's a policy proposal. It is only for citizens. You have that correct. And all citizens receive a regular, unconditional sum of money from the government, regardless of their income, resources, or employment status.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. Like, allowance is probably a good way to
it's like a
describe
shorthand,
it. But allowance, when we all were children and we used to get these, they were conditional.
Right.
UBI functions on an unconditional, regular sum of money. So yeah, I really think allowance is a good shorthand for it.
Yeah.
But the biggie on it is the unconditional part. At least that is the big part to me.
Yep.
And it is only for citizens. So despite I am usually a huge citizen or not, I don't care kind of mindset as a liberal, like a progressive liberal, even at that.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest part about it. And I have talking points that I've brought up every time I discuss this with folks. So
right.
Let's get into it.
Well, first I want to say, like, what is because you said that you've been a strong proponent for a while. Yeah. What brought you, because I know that you and I were both conservatives for a good portion of our lives. But like, I'm curious because, and this will lead somewhere on my end, but like, what is it that brought you into the idea of UBI?
So I grew up with my dad and my mom coming from two completely different sides of the political and economic spectrum. My dad's family is hot shit on fire, stinking wealthy. And my mother's is absolute working class. And they even were for their entire lives and passed away as working class citizens, teachers specifically. And going to visit my dad's family and seeing that he had live-in housekeepers, gardeners, chefs that stayed on the property in their own little house. I always thought, oh, that's fun. I would love to do that for someone someday, because I was always a service mindset. And then when I found later in life, like in my 30s, how little they were paid to do that for an old crotchety man, I thought, oh, Jesus, why don't they get government benefits
to
help subsidize this? And then that's when I learned that the government benefits that I thought my conservative voting was going for weren't ever reaching them because they were above the poverty line enough that they never would qualify for any of this stuff because they had employment. But it was never enough to buy a house in the part of Connecticut that they lived in. So they just got this lucky situation where the wealthy family that owns the manor house, let's be honest, has live-in servants. I mean, even when my dad was little, even the nanny lived in the house. There was two houses on the property right next to each other, and then the big manor house, and one was for the live-in childcare and one was for the servants, the gardeners, and the cooks. So when I found out that there was this huge discrepancy, like with many people who move on to progressive or liberal thoughts when they used to be conservative, when it finally hits them, they can't do it anymore.
Right.
So that was it for me, experiencing this huge breadth of difference in the lives of folks. It didn't settle with me, and it made me decently upset. It did.
So I became aware of even the concept of UBI, and I can never remember his name, but he was a presidential candidate in the primaries in 2016 or maybe 2020. No, I think it was 20. It was definitely 2016. And it's his last name's Yang, and I always think Bowen Yang, but Bowen Yang is from SNL and played him.
That'd be
And
Andrew Yang.
Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang.
And yeah, he was a Democratic Party hopeful, actually from the Northeast.
Yeah, and he ran on a platform of UBI and
the Forward Party.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it was interesting. So when he started talking about it, I was like, oh, this is an interesting concept. And it was weird too because we started seeing more, I wouldn't say like full-blown conservatives, but definitely more conservative people kind of getting behind his platform, his UBI idea. I'm thinking of like the Joe Rogan types.
Yeah.
And eventually it was put someone wanted, it was probably the Majority Report with Sam Cedar on YouTube. I don't know if you ever watched that.
Love Sam Cedar. Yes.
I think that was what it was that I was watching, and they were saying, and they basically pointed out like that, you know, they're all, everybody on that show is basically in favor of a UBI, but that Andrew Yang supporting it, a lot of the reason why he was getting so much hype from people on that were more conservative is that there was this, whether he was doing it on purpose or not was not clear, but there was an implication that people were hearing of this would replace food stamps, this would replace all the other social programs, and they were like, and on the Majority Report they were like, if it was supplementing those, we're in favor of that. But like, if you are doing UBI so that we can pay you $1,000 a month or whatever the number was, I think he was running on $1,000 a month was his idea per person.
It was per person, not per family.
Yeah. And we're going to do that for everyone in America, and not give support to other people or take away, you know, healthcare benefits. It was actually it was kind of like when a corporation gives you unlimited PTO so that you never can take time off. It was one of those, like, it looks really good,
and they also don't have to pay it out when you quit.
Yeah. And it's like it's kind of a lot, and I don't want to accuse Andrew Yang of that. I don't think I ever heard him saying that, but I think the implication from all the people who were kind of like, oh, this is kind of a cool idea, was largely that idea. And I am not in favor of that. I'm in favor of UBI while we have our other social safety nets in place.
Yeah. So I agree with you, and I'm gonna put a pin, not a pin. I'm gonna put a emphasis on it that really separates these two. It's that regular and unconditional.
Yep.
So it's also citizens. I believe that those other programs you were mentioning, food stamps, healthcare, those are needs based.
Yeah.
And I believe that those should go to people who may not yet be a citizen. Because if you
Sure.
come to this country and you're bringing something to us that we need, whether it's labor, intelligence, mind share, power, influence, like if you're coming here for the good, I want you to be able to take advantage of those as you come here, maybe to escape political tyranny.
Yeah.
It's kind of why we want people to come to this country. Whereas UBI, I don't want it to feel like the next level of that, but it kind of could be seen that way. Like once you become a citizen, you get UBI. So I believe that UBI is not needs based. The need is you are a citizen and you're still alive. Those are the
Yes.
needs.
Yeah.
And I personally feel there needs to be some kind of layer on this that involves criminal acts, taking away some of the benefit. But what you mentioned, I've always been needs to be there, period, because those are needs based. Not everybody needs that. Not everybody needs food stamps. And my family's been on them before. So I
Hmm.
completely am glad that they exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah, I agree. I think that, and when you bring in
So
the idea of
Yang kind of killed
non-citizens,
it there. He did.
well,
Yang showed his conservative side a little bit by saying he
yeah.
wanted them replaced with that.
Well, I don't know that he's even the one who said it. I think it was other people kind of backing, being like, okay, we can take this and run with it. Because is
Okay.
so I think that like he deserves credit for even giving some of us the idea of it. Like I had never heard of it before him, of UBI.
Mm,
And but he also, and partly I think it was that like, and I'm not calling him an idiot. This is the term useful idiot. I think like, I think he suggested something and it got run with by other people who were, and it was only temporary that it got run with because very
yeah.
quickly the conservatives were like, yeah, well, we're not going to do that.
I feel that when I was looking at UBI, it it's easier to budget for than it seems
Yeah,
because you know you're always providing it. Needs based has like a bucket of money that's funded by tax and investments if you're in a state that allows that. And then that is distributed as needed to the parties that need it.
yeah,
If you know you're giving every person in America a G a month, that's kind of easy to budget for.
yeah,
And also, this is my big thought, it stops the idea of catastrophic events
hmm,
just decimating an entire metropolitan area.
right,
Like look at Ohio and the really poor parts of that. Look at
yeah,
Michigan and the really poor parts of Detroit. If there was UBI, I'm not saying that it wouldn't look or function the way it does, but it sure as hell wouldn't the way it does now.
right. Right, and it also would help in, and this is kind of a granular look at what you just said, I guess, but like look at we're in the research triangle area.
Mm-hmm.
If for some reason, we had a massive layoff situation going across several, huge employers in our area,
And we have a lot of them.
and yeah. I mean, at one point they were talking about Apple was going to come here and get 10,000, and Google was going to come here and put 10,000 jobs in. So like,
Apple did sort of. I have
yeah,
a previous connection to
but
that company. Apple sort of did, but it's not to the extent that they stated.
right. But if we had if we had 30,000 layoffs or something in the tech and pharmaceutical sector right now, it would
Oh, we'd be
affect
screwed.
it would affect so many other things. It would affect Uber drivers. It would affect McDonald's,
Private
because
business owners.
right, anybody, because
Like,
you can't spend money because we wouldn't have any
no,
money to spend.
no.
If you had UBI, then it would be like, I mean, not to say that you wouldn't necessarily tighten your belt, but you're not gonna
You just distribute it differently.
but you're not gonna be like, oh fuck, I can't spend any money. I can't.
Yeah.
I have to like hold on. I gotta figure this out in the same way. And so there is that benefit. Yeah.
So, okay. My my big, I guess you could say, 8 points that make UBI work. And it's funny to think that most conservatives or people who used to be like us, when it stopped working was when it hit us specifically. So
Yeah.
I have a family I was close to in Connecticut. Their son is gay, and their daughter is bisexual. And as soon as the minister at our church believed that you could pray the gay out of her son, she's like, I'm fucking done. I can't. But it had to hit her specifically because the general belief of a conservative mindset is it's all about me. The general belief of a progressive or liberal mindset is I have what I need or want. I'm thinking of others. So it's like an outward mindset as opposed to an inward mindset.
Yeah.
So UBI, the 8 points that I believe all touch on outward. And there's some inward stuff here. So it's poverty reduction, economic stability, the reduction of inequality. I love that one. Improved health and well-being. Let's look at Europe, or even our European coworkers is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Incentive for innovation and entrepreneurship, not just capitalism.
Yep.
Simplification of the welfare system. That's speaking of like that having to budget for it thing. Work-life balance and voluntary work. And support for caregivers and unpaid workers.
Right.
So those are always what I've brought up when people are like, oh, but what about? I'm like, okay, well, these are the 8 points that really, I think, sell it to most even middle of the road economic headspace people. Because I'm a capitalist mindset. I always have been.
Yeah.
Because I've been a business owner before, and I've done well as a business owner before. But I always thought about the people who worked for me or the people that were my customers more than I really ever did myself.
Yep.
Because let's be honest, I structured it so I made enough money. Like I did that on purpose from the start.
Yeah.
I had the time and resources to think about others.
Yeah. That's that. I like your 8 pillars. I had thought of some of the arguments. So like I had thought of some of the arguments that I've heard people say against, not specifically UBI, but the idea of, like the big thing we get when you talk about communism of whatever, with people that actually kind of understand what it is, like opponents that actually,
people that actually understand communism the way it's defined as communism.
Well, at least to some extent. So one of the things that you get is that it will kill incentive. It'll kill competition. It'll kill, like there's the idea of like, well, no one will want to be a doctor.
No.
So
in fact, it does the opposite.
Yeah.
Because right now, let me be real mean and pejorative, but you and I both probably know of a family or an individual that has taken advantage of government programs and has no intention of ever being off of them because they're available.
Yeah.
That individual with UBI is going to act exactly the same. Like right. UBI in place is not going to stop that lack of incentive or that lack of innovation. In fact, bringing the same capabilities to everyone financially, at least, is, I feel, going to do the complete opposite to a larger extent. So some of those folks that just get the money for waking up in the morning and being a citizen, they don't have to prove that they're looking for a job because they're on unemployment, like if we had a big layoff in our area, like I've been on unemployment before.
Me too.
Or they don't have to prove that they have 6 children,
right?
And they need this much in food stamps, like that. You're just here. You're an American citizen. You're doing your duty by not being a criminal. We're just going to give you cash, bro. Like, it's that simple.
Right.
So it applies that belief of you're good before you're bad.
Yep.
Rather than, unfortunately, government assistance programs tend to only be thought of as there for the people who aren't doing it right.
Right.
They have a negative connotation.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest, and you're right, one of the most common pushbacks I get from UBI is the disincentive to work.
Yep.
And its impact on existing welfare programs. I'm going to tell you what, UBI is not meant to replace an income.
Right. Well, and that's
even though it's called income, it's not meant to replace one.
So that's where I've always gone with it. So 2 things. One is, or I've got a couple of things to say. First, in regards to your pillar of in it will make people want to be entrepreneurs.
The
That
incentive for innovation and entrepreneurship.
right.
Yeah.
So that's a huge part of the thing, which I didn't really. I've made that point before with other government benefits. Like if we all had universal single payer insurance, because that's a huge reason
Oh
why people
God,
stay in shitty
please.
jobs. You know what I mean? So like, there's so
Yes.
many things we have that are keeping us in corporate jobs that we hate. But
Yes.
but like, and I think UBI would help with that. I also think that the so when you talk about people who abuse the system,
Mhm.
this is just anecdotal. This is just my own personal experience. But everyone that I've ever known who has abused the system has been conservative. Like literally has voted conservative.
Okay.
You know,
I
and
Interesting. I never cared
I don't.
until my wife, who I wholeheartedly blame
Yeah,
for me knowing and caring as much about politics as I do now.
yeah,
My wife, the absolute Southerner Democrat, um, is I never thought about that before. So I always just thought, oh, they were derelict bunch of kids from a bunch of different men, or they were a petty criminal that could never get a job because
right.
all the low level jobs require a criminal background check that they won't pass. I had a stepbrother. I have a stepbrother that's like that.
Yeah,
So UBI, it it removes that stigma
yep,
that getting money from the government's a handout.
yep.
And my father is an on fire conservative. Fun quick story. I had to be escorted out of the voting line by a police officer while waiting with my father, my stepbrother, and my stepbrother for the election between Barack and that would have been Barack's first was who?
McCain.
McCain. Yep. I was walked out because my dad was dropping racial slurs in the middle of downtown Durham. Now, let me be completely clear to folks that are not from here. Downtown Durham is a pretty ethnically diverse area.
Yeah,
There were Hispanic folks in this line. There were Asian folks in this line. There were black folks. There were white folks. There were all kinds of people in this line. And my 5'1", 100 pounds wet dad is like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," like under his breath. I had to be escorted out of a line because he couldn't keep his conservative shut. So that's an example of my father. He has a brother-in-law that he has now passed, the brother-in-law, and he was on government assistance for his medication because he
yeah.
was on disability. My dad couldn't stand that his tax dollars went to fund any quality of life for this individual because he didn't work. I'm like, he's physically disabled. I'm not saying he's not lazy, but he's physically disabled.
You can be
Why are
both.
you upset about that? What?
You can be both.
Yeah,
You can be
I have
anything you
learned
want in America.
in this modern right in this modern political landscape. I have learned it can always be both. Trump can be a criminal, but those trials can also be very carefully planned date wise. Like it can
Oh yeah,
be
yeah,
both.
yeah,
So like the idea that it stigmatizes government handouts as it's only for the worse off
yeah,
also then stigmatizes coming to America to fuck over everybody and be a wealthy magnate in a certain industry.
yeah,
It stigmatizes both ends of this.
yeah,
So that kind of speaks to one of the criticisms I often hear, and that is that disincentive to work and also the negative impact on existing welfare programs. So I have an idea that reduction in specific supports by introducing UBI, that it could lead to a reduction or an elimination of specialized programs that address specific needs, like you're mentioning, healthcare, education, and housing assistance. But that's only the folks that come at me and say, oh, well, UBI's got to replace that.
yeah,
Here's something that conservatives often think. This is a line in the sand they usually draw. They believe that there is only just so much of any one thing. So there's 100 systems. There's 100 benefits. There's $100. There's 100 free housings.
The
And as
piece of
soon
the
as you
pie.
give, yeah, and the pie never gets bigger. It's 100. And as soon as you give any of that to a less deserving individual, that means there's less for me.
Yes. So
that's not how this works. Because I've had even people say, oh, well, UBI can't work because of inflation. You just adjust it with inflation, dummy.
yeah,
Like everything else has to be adjusted for inflation.
absolutely.
You're a homeowner. I bet your house is worth more than when you bought it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Inflation.
Yeah.
Is your car worth less than when you bought it? Yes.
The
depreciation. Like this is a thing.
Yeah. The inflation argument is, and I saw this recently when it came to raising minimum wage.
Oh
someone,
God! That's gotta happen.
Someone pointed out that like they warned us that inflation would happen if we raised the minimum wage. We didn't raise the minimum wage, and inflation happened.
It happened anyway.
And now the people who are making minimum wage are just extra fucked. Like
yeah, and minimum wage here, and actually we had an episode. It's one of our most successful TikToks.
Yeah.
And that is the one. That's a one where unfortunately people think that you're an asshole. And it's
they're correct, but for the wrong reason.
They're correct, but only as TikTok does. There's no context. Is that minimum wage, like UBI, I don't think was ever structured or intended to put you above the poverty line.
Yeah.
But if you're going to enact a minimum wage, you should have UBI as well. Here's my reason.
Yep.
UBI plus minimum should, if implemented correctly, get you a house, a roof over your head where you're not going to get murdered.
Yeah.
It should get you enough food and transportation to get you to and from work and feed yourself and get your basic health needs covered.
Right.
Yes, I am not including children or anybody else in this because that is a very sticky situation when you start involving dependencies.
Except the dependents would get UBI. Like, right?
Yeah, okay, technically they would. Yes, because they're citizens. Good point. Okay. But the idea that minimum wage and livable wage are two very different arguments.
Yep.
The reason that minimum wage still is a conversation today is because there is no penalties to an employer who chooses to ride that minimum wage line. Like if they put a toe over it, they blow up into space. Like they're afraid of it. Well, that's your problem for structuring your business that it can't survive on paying a living wage.
Right.
And also because our country ties healthcare to employment, those individuals feel they have to get that job. But then think about a large number of people who work at businesses like the one we work at. Do you think a lot of them are full-time? I don't.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of those part-timers are selecting healthcare that is exorbitantly expensive so they end up making half their paycheck? No. They can't afford to. UBI fills in that hole.
Yes.
It just does. And at a federal level, you would be able to fund UBI from every state, not just one state, because I do wholeheartedly believe that UBI should, and I didn't believe this at first, but I do now, the same for every last citizen in the country. And the reason I believe that is because it's not meant to replace an income. So you can't go move to San Francisco or LA or New York City and make more UBI. No, it should be the same across the country.
So this, I guess, is a little bit different in what I thought of when I think of UBI. So I will say I still have an answer to the destroying the will to work, whatever we call that.
Which in fact, those people who weren't going to will to work won't anyway. So there's no need to address that. So a bad egg is a bad egg. Sorry.
Yeah. So like I think about the situation we have a lot of new college grads in, as far as I might have two roommates in a small apartment. I think my thought was a UBI should be able to cover that living situation and keep you fed and housed. It's not getting you your own apartment, But if you're cool with being in, an apartment with two other people and you're pooling your UBI to help cover that, like that is a doable thing. And
Okay.
my thought, when you look at that, is there are going to be people who, like 3-4 potheads living in an apartment being like,
so what?
We'll eat cereal.
Like,
But there's a lot of people like Sarah and I, like if we got UBI and let's say UBI paid for our housing and our food, between us and Logan, it paid for our housing and our food, we would still want to work because we want to go on trips. I want Chocolate Diamond to become a successful business. Sarah has business ideas that she would love to do. Sarah likes what she does. Well, I don't know how happy she is in the functions of her job specifically at the moment because it's been 11 years and things are stressful and the economy is stressful, but she is in it, something that she believes in, that she is doing good. So like, we would get a lot of really strong benefits from working to whatever extent. However, we would also not feel the same kind of trapped that you get. And so I think
I was just about to point that out. So the trapped part very much kind of speaks to employment's tied to insurance in this country.
Yeah.
What do you think was the most recent example of what UBI could look like?
The payments that we received during COVID.
So
the Trump payments.
Mm-hmm. So remove the human malware, which is one of my favorite things to call COVID. Human malware, I love that. So remove the pandemic from it. So all the restaurants are open. Everything is moving and going. Private business owners and large-scale corporations are raking in cash like they always do.
Yeah.
You just gave an example of what UBI could look like, because did you use that to pay for your rent or your mortgage? Or did you now have a few thousand more dollars to go to Disney, to eat out somewhere, to buy a new shirt? Like, the idea that giving money out to people hurts the will? No, because they get a taste, pardon me for being kind of rude, they get a taste of what it feels like to have some money in their pocket.
Yeah.
And they go spend it. And I don't care if they spend it stupid or they spend it well, they're still spending it. And they can't not spend it locally, so it's going to help my tax income.
Right. And I agree with you completely. Whether it's UBI or it's a higher minimum wage, that's been my argument for a long time is that they want money back in the economy constantly. Like that's something that we're
okay.
But what I was going to say is people at the bottom spend a higher percentage of the money that they get, and if that money
because
they have to. So if let's say you're making $40,000 a year. $40,000 a year, that's okay if you're a recent college grad, like that's not a terrible income, but you're probably spending $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is after taxes. You're spending almost every single dime. If you raised that person up to $80,000, the percentage goes down maybe slightly. Maybe they're saving a little bit, but they're still spending a lot. That amount, the higher you get along the way in the income, the bigger that gap becomes. Elon Musk is I know it's different because because a lot of big billionaires, their money is tied up in assets. But just say, for example,
I remember Matthew talking about that. I mean, I don't have any money to my name. I only take a modest salary of $1, but the company pays for literally all of my life.
Right. But the point being, like, if Elon Musk, his cost of living, the amount of money he spends, or Jeff Bezos or any of them, the amount of money that they spend on an annual basis, percentage wise of their
is lower
of their net worth, it's minuscule. It's not like if Jeff Bezos was spending everything he made every year, or that would be huge. But he's not. I don't know what let's say Jeff Bezos makes $1 billion a year, and I know that that's obviously wrong because he has more than twice as many as he has years in his life, billions. So, but like, let's say he makes $1 billion a year. He's spending $1 billion a year. That's a lot of money into the economy. But if what if, let's say 20% of America, so 20% of 300,000 is spending the 60 grand we make each. That's huge. And if you made it 70 grand, you're really not changing. You're just giving us a little air to breathe.
Yeah.
And you're not, and you're putting a little more money into the economy, and you're keeping it flowing and moving around.
So
whereas there's money hoarding essentially at the top.
Yeah. And here's what I like about UBI, and you touched on it there for a second. UBI would be funded by what in most scenarios?
The blood of the rich.
I mean, or the adrenochromes of the children, one or the other.
Viva la revolution!
It would be funded by tax and investment revenue by the federal government. Okay. Which then, at federal level, gets distributed to citizens of your country. Those citizens will, by no fault or action of their own, spend some of it out of state, but will spend a large portion of it in their state. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like low-key money laundering. So it's funded by taxes, it's spent locally, and then makes tax revenue. Yeah. So it just becomes a constant cycle. And because it's universal, it can be budgeted for.
Yeah.
Therefore, you can plan ahead of how much you need. Look at businesses in our area who started doing subscription programs, restaurants, different retailers that do subscription boxes where they mail you something once a month. It's not that you're not getting a $50 item for only $25. I mean, you are, but it's the economics of scale that allow that to happen. So the company don't mind that they're getting regular income out of this, and the customers sure as hell don't care because they're getting a good value they feel. Universal basic income is only going to, within reason, increase the local spending, because I like how you balance it with minimum wage. So if I raised your minimum wage, you don't feel like you fell into a bucket of money. You feel like you can afford everything just a little more. Yeah. If you had UBI, you feel like you have spending money. Like it's a totally different mindset. And those payments during COVID are a great example of that. Some people had never seen a check that big in their life. Yeah. In their life. Ever. Yeah. And they now feel flush as hell. So let's be serious. The same bad actors are going to live in government housing, eat government cheese, but go to the supermarket and buy crab legs with that money. Yeah. They're going to be the same person who buy crab legs on food stamps. Like that person's still going to be that person. Yeah. But the average good citizen with UBI feels like they have money now. Raising the minimum wage, keep in mind, minimum, not livable, only makes you feel like you have like a hair more. And depending on what industry you work in, especially if it's a service industry, your minimum wage going up is almost inconsequential, because if you don't get tipped income, you have no income. Right. So it's very much one of the other criticisms is a social contract. People throw that at me a lot. So the idea that UBI could alter the social contract and change the relationship between citizens and the state. Oh, yeah, improve it, you mean? Yeah, exactly, because it's working so great. You mean improve how people feel about the government?
It's similar. I forget who it was that said, I think it was Hari Kondabolu who said, like, how come every time travel movie, they're always like, you can't change the past. And he's like, that's why we never see black time travelers, because white people have a...
Oh, no. Well, the other idea is that, like, the perception of fairness. I like this criticism of UBI. Some folks view UBI as unfair. Again, usually conservatives, because the only way you should become wealthy or have something is to work.
Right.
I then state, as I probably did to them once in the conversation already, it is not intended. I know the word income's in it.
Yeah.
It is not intended to replace an income.
Right.
It is only there to essentially feel like those COVID payments. Holy wow. $1,900? Honey, we're going out to eat every weekend now. Like, it's that kind of thing. It's not, I gave you a bump in your minimum wage. Like, bro, you and I just had our annual reviews because we all run on a different than calendar year fiscal.
Yeah.
What was it, 10% we got?
I did not get 10%.
Even if you gave us that, because I didn't either, even if you gave us 10%, that's behind the inflation rate.
Yeah.
So even companies who could give a salary an increase that keeps up with inflation are choosing not to. So think about it. Those folks who stay at the same job forever are technically behind the rate of inflation.
Yeah.
UBI fills in that gap. And if that person then chooses to still work at the same place, they chose to still work there.
Yeah.
You and I come from a generation where our parents stayed at the same job forever. Well, the economy doesn't work like that anymore, Mom and Dad, because if we don't jump jobs, we never get that $10,000 raise.
Right.
We never get that 20% increase. The jobs I'm looking at that are in my industry are $30,000 to $40,000 more than I'm taking right now, and it's only one level up from where I'm at, because that's just what that job pays to a new employer. So
think also about how. So think about your worst day at any job, but say your worst day at your current job.
Okay.
How
the day
much?
I met you.
Yeah, your first day, first day of work.
Yep, literally my first day of work.
You think about that worst day.
Okay.
How much more bearable would it be if you were like, I don't need this job though. This job, if for some reason this terrible, stressful thing makes my job go away, whether it's because somebody else fucks up or I fuck up or whatever the reason is that I lose this job, it is not going to potentially ruin my life.
Yeah.
That makes I used to say this. I don't know that I would do this anymore, but I used to say, like, if I won the lottery, I would probably keep working for at least a year to figure everything out, because the second you don't need a job anymore, it's so much more bearable. You know, like, everything is, like, oh yeah, like, oh, that person who is an asshole to me at work, well, they don't really have the power over me that they used to have. I am here because I want to be here to some extent. I'm here, and so
you're an American. You're there because you need to be able to go to the doctor. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think
how does that apply to the fairness aspect?
Okay,
so, for example, go ahead.
I was going to say, it does not apply to the fairness aspect. My argument to the fairness aspect would be, the idea of money was very much made when we needed everyone in society to do something. And so we came up with a system that was a little different than barter system, a little more advanced, because certain services that we valued didn't necessarily have like the same kind of value. So it wasn't just like a chicken for a new axe kind of thing. We had
where are you going with this?
We had all kinds of different things. It has now become, we value money, and but the money was always the system to keep things moving. And the people at the top that's where the social contract has been broken, because they're not keeping the money moving. They aren't.
No, in fact, they're keeping more of it, like you pointed out earlier.
Right. So they are the ones
folks who have less of it.
They broke the social contract because if you look, I'm sure you've seen the meme where it says, during feudal times, the workers had a 3-day weekend, or so, I forget what it was. They had certain benefits because there was fear of a actual revolt because money was so localized. So
Oh
like,
yeah.
so it wasn't necessarily like if the peasants revolt against the duke or whatever is in the area, there isn't necessarily the means for them to just be like, now that's an impossibility.
Yeah.
So like the idea was, there was a social contract was there and protecting everyone. The social contract has been broken by the people at the top. It's the tail wagging the dog, and they're saying, I'm expecting you to spend money. I'm going to pay money to get people to write articles about how millennials don't go to the don't go to chain restaurants and don't do this and don't do that, while I am literally hoarding money like I'm the dragon from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And so sure, I'm sure that Bezos spends more money than you or I will ever make in our lives, but percentage wise, it's fucking nothing. And I'm not saying you have to spend 100% of your money, but like, if you're making that, you should. It needs to be somewhat generative. You can't just constantly be like, okay, I figured out how I can live off of 1 billion and make 10 billion every year forever, because eventually we're getting there. We're getting there pretty badly, where it's just like, oh well, what is the fucking point for the people at the bottom?
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
that's where I think the social contract thing.
Well,
I just think it's a bad. I think it's people not understanding that, yes, we were all born into a system where it is basically is where it is now. But the
yeah.
idea of money in the long human scale, like in thousands of years, the idea of money was to keep things moving. It was like, I need the person who is going to farm to provide food for the masses. I need, now in
Oh
our
yeah.
current society, I need the trash man and the plumber and the people who are keeping the septic systems and the sewer systems
Yeah.
working. We need all of those
The
things,
people who work
and
at the
we
freaking
don't.
power plant. We
And
need
we
them and to service our
and
electricity. Like,
and anybody who is doing a needed task, and I would argue some unneeded tasks, there's a value to, uh, podcaster, but but anybody who's doing a needed task deserves to be able to live. That is just like, but because of the system, we're getting out of that, and I don't care how you do it. If we can get a system where we say everyone who is doing a needed task can survive semi comfortably. That's all I care about. I don't care if they've come up with a different idea that's not UBI, not raising the minimum wage. I'm fine with whatever that is, but that's where the social contract has been breached at the top. And
no,
it's like anything else. It's all trickle down economics works. It just doesn't work the way they say it does. It's
correct. So I completely align with that idea. That's why I like UBI's idea, where the universal part of it, right? The idea that it doesn't separate money from success or money from wealth, but it makes it less of a consequence
yeah.
and more of a benefit. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a upper middle class dream to never have to worry about how much something costs,
Yep.
because we see money or the price of something being inconsequential as being that next level of success. That's how we upper middle class folks believe that, and I will not shy away from that's exactly what I am.
Yep.
But as soon as I just give you $1,000 a month,
Yeah.
the idea that somehow reduces the the incentive to work, or even worse, reduces it's not going to even reduce the innovation sense, because here in America, the I came from nothing and made it big story is another like lofty belief. There are books, there are
Mm-hmm.
films, there are television shows, great ones written about this. And the idea that UBI would make it like separates the dirty business. I mean, there's even a saying, the dirty business of money. It separates that from how much your dental work costs.
Yeah.
Like the idea that my sainted mother-in-law, who makes rather poor decisions on a regular basis, could go get her health care taken care of as a retired person and have it have nothing to do with where she worked is such a fantastic idea. And
Yeah.
my my big belief and why I think UBI in 2024 is possible more than, because you were saying raising minimum wage, I believe that we're either going to get UBI or a livable wage. And the problem with livable wage is that it requires so many more of the subsystems in government and in economics to change to support every greedy asshole business owner to actually pay every single person who comes into their business and works there enough money to live in their local area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That has, in my opinion, way too many things dependent on it. And I came from the food service industry.
Yeah.
For 10 years, I was in it. Whereas UBI is just a federal program. You're a citizen. You ain't dead yet. You're alive. Here's your money. Like, it's that simple.
Yeah.
That separates the business owner who wants nothing more than to pay that server the $3 stupid ass an hour that they can get away with paying that individual. And the idea that it would somehow, one of the things I had a married and family member say, well, it's just going to get a bunch of people to try to move to this country. You really think that many more? Remember, I said only citizens get it.
Yeah.
You need to be a citizen. It also is going to make it easier for programs like welfare, like Medicaid, like food stamps, like unemployment or employment assistance. It makes programs like that easier to fund because you can plan for UBI. You can't plan for welfare. You can estimate it, but you can't plan for who's going to go into the food stamps office tomorrow and apply, crying on their way in, because this individual believes that only the worst are the ones on food stamps. My girlfriend at the time put off applying for them because she knew she had to do it in person and she thought she was going to get judged going in there. And in
Yeah.
fact, they were super friendly people. Like,
Yeah.
the idea that government assistance is only for the worst. Ask any of our European coworkers how they think of their government.
Yeah.
They like their government more than those wealthy folks up top, like you said, who have broken that social contract. They like their government more because
Yeah.
they feel the government really cares about them,
Did you
not
ever?
is pushing them away because, oh, you want a handout, you know?
Yeah. Did you ever watch The High Cost of Low Price? It's a documentary from like 15 to 20 years ago.
Nope, but
It,
now I'm looking it up to add it to my list.
it's a documentary about Walmart, and it talks about all the
Oh,
different
those motherfuckers.
talks about all the different ways Walmart fucks not only their employees but kind of the entire economy, and the environment. Actually, there's a good amount of environmental shit too, and it's
Okay.
old enough that some of it may not be accurate anymore. But
2005.
okay, so almost 20 years ago. So one of the things that they talk about in the documentary, which I would be really hard to believe that this is exclusive to Walmart, is that Walmart, while not paying people enough to live, also gives all their employees enough information on how to uh, get on those programs to to subsidize what Walmart is not willing to pay for.
Or
And
what Walmart won't give a lot of them full time and then have to start paying for themselves.
right,
Because
right.
there's a large proportion of Walmart employees who are not full time because
Well,
in
and
many states that stops them from having to provide. Walmart meaning.
that is mentioned in there, is that they do a lot of that, like wage theft and those other things.
Mm-hmm.
So not only when I say that the people at the top are breaking the social contract, sometimes they are like literally doing all the little thing, like the things that we think of poor people doing, like but they're doing it. You know, it's a different. We are so we taxpayers are subsidizing, or at the time were, I don't know how true it is now, we're subsidizing Walmart's employees because Walmart won't pay them correctly. And if you're, and people used to say, oh, I can't afford to not shop at Walmart. I haven't shopped at Walmart in a long time, like probably close to 20 years. And I would say, people would tell me when I would talk about that, oh, I can't afford not to shop at Walmart. And I was like, I can't afford to shop at Walmart because it's cheaper, and then I'm paying more taxes because they're not paying their people properly. So I'm paying, like I think a huge part of, and again, this is not a UBI situation, but it's like a different part of it, is I would way rather pay for a little bit higher for a product and know that you're paying the person than thinking that they may have to be on on those programs. I would way
All
rather.
day.
Yep. And
Every damn time.
yep.
Yes, I will
And if
pay more because I know no one's getting fucked in the process.
but
Yes.
also it does affect us. Like it does, like paying more, it does affect us because we're taxpayers. Also,
Yeah.
I would rather go pay for, like, let's say you own a company and you pay all your employees a good living wage, and
There's
you
that. I
don't
like that. A living wage. There it
and
is.
you don't do any charity as a company whatsoever. I would rather support you than Walmart doing, I don't know, whatever charity Walmart does, because I'd rather be like, the best way that we can help a lot of things is by supporting our workers, and then our workers are free to, like, oh, you have, you want to give to the Jimmy Fund. The Jimmy Fund's super local to Massachusetts, I guess, now that I say that. You want to give to St. Jude's. Okay,
Yeah.
you as an individual are making enough money that you can do that if you wanted to do that. Or you can go volunteer your time or whatever. I would way rather I think that so many of our economic situations that we're in America could be solved if everybody was paying their people correctly, and then we would have so
Yeah.
many other things that we're currently, like, having to, I don't even want to say subsidize, but a lot of our charities are covering those things, like, oh, we're going
A
to do
lot
a
of our
toy.
charities exist because they have to.
Exactly, because
How
of
many boxes of food did we pack?
that's a great one. I mean,
27,000 boxes are
no,
packed in
900
that place per month.
boxes. Oh yeah. We did 900 boxes in 3 hours.
We did 903 hours. The only reason that food bank has to exist the way it does is because we don't give enough money so our citizens can go feed themselves.
Right.
Food, eating, a very
right.
simple thing that they should be able to do.
Right. And if every company paid their employees correctly, we would have so many less of those things. We would have.
You know what I thought of when I was packing those? How many of these are going to people who have a job? And that killed my heart so fast.
Yeah.
I remember packing up the boxes, and I looked at our coworker who was right across from me, and I said, I know a lot of these are going to older folks like our parents' age, but how many of these are going to families that work?
Yeah.
Because you have a job, you are employed, but you're not gainfully employed because no one's holding your employer to the flame to make them pay you enough money to actually live. So you have a job and are at or below the poverty line. What? That makes zero sense. Lord Acton in, oh God, probably the early 1900s or late 1800s said power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Speaking about those folks at the top, replace the word power with the word money.
Yeah.
Like, it just does.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It's
money is power. And so it makes sense, but.
And you know what? Okay, I like how you just likened those. UBI removes that direct connection to I have more of this than you, so therefore I'm better or more powerful than you. Just like that bad egg is going to still spend it unwisely if they had UBI.
Yeah.
You're still going to have that individual that uses money as influence and power to gain an advantage in a situation. Those
Yeah.
same people are going to exist no matter what, Mike. That's not
Yeah.
changing. But there's
Right.
going to be enough good eggs that
Yeah.
would use their
Well,
UBI to go out and eat more and benefit their local economy and boost the
yeah.
bottom line and profits of someone who might even live in their neighborhood and owns that
Yeah.
restaurant or business. Like it's
Yeah. And money is power, and money would still be power in that situation. You would just be giving everyone, and this is a form of power, autonomy. And
because it
if you,
reduces the inequality by
yeah,
giving it
but
to everyone.
they would still be Jeff Bezos's, and they would still
Of
be
course.
Elon Musk's, and and lots of people, and
There would still be
I
the
would
Walton
have,
family, speaking of Walmart.
yeah.
Like they're not going anywhere.
No, I would still, if you got us into a situation where everyone basic needs were met, I literally couldn't give a fuck how much money the person at the top makes. It's because that person thinks. I mean, like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk at $1 billion. I'm sure you've heard this. It's common online, but if you saved
I don't
five
spend any time
thousand
on the internet. I have no idea what you're talking about.
if you save $5,000 a day from the time that Columbus sailed the ocean blue until today, without interest or anything
Oh,
else,
oh God.
you
Yes.
would not have $1 billion yet.
Cool.
And then you get to that point where people you make you because billions of dollars are unfathomable to some of us.
Yeah.
And so that's a way of kind of giving it some perspective. And someone will say, yeah, but they worked harder. Oh, they worked 400 years harder than I did. Like I don't make $5,000 a day now. Like even for the 30 to 40 years that we will work. But you think that this person, and that's for a billionaire. That is not for someone like Elon Musk, who at one point was like almost $250 billion. So
Yeah.
that is $5,000 a day since before Jesus was born. And you know what I mean? Like these are crazy numbers, and you could still with giving everybody what they need, and you could still have someone who could afford to buy everything that they could fucking imagine, and you would have none of that stuff. So like we're not. This isn't a punishment for the top. It is. It
No.
and I think that there's a lot of people who think it is a punishment for the top, and it's like no, the top would still be at the top. It's just that the bottom wouldn't be so low.
Wait.
You know?
What has been the phrasing? How is this spun that you've heard as a punishment for the wealthy and
And
elite? How is
anytime
UBI a punishment for them?
not UBI specifically, but
Oh, sorry. Okay.
the idea of anything that is allowing for the people at the bottom to survive by no extra means, by no extra like
Oh,
work
so it's
or
not a punishment. They feel slighted
sure,
because
but they
so
behave as if it's punishment.
right. Well, if I would go as far as to say they just feel slighted. Well, I had to work for this. And you know what? Our boomer parents try to pull that shit. My house costs this. Yup, doesn't anymore, even with inflation. My fuel costs this. Yup, doesn't anymore, even with inflation. Like the idea that the economy we have was not the result of many things together.
Yeah,
Saying it was before is, I will be honest, has never made me think, well, darn, that explains it. Like, I've never
yeah.
thought you comparing any cost of anything ever before as being lower. Please explain to me when any country in the entire existence of humanity things got less expensive ever.
Well, at least on a long-term trajectory.
Okay, yeah, over the great,
Yeah,
like, let's say even a 10-year, even a 5-year period.
yeah.
You
The only thing I can think of is specifically when something is brand new innovation, it's more expensive for a little bit.
uh
So like computers in the 70s were really
unattainable for no.
unattainable.
Okay. So maybe 10 years.
And I'm sure like EVs, when EVs first came out, it was like crazy.
It's ridiculous.
So there is a little bit, and that makes sense because you have to. It's that making back money on your investment idea. You have to figure out how to get it there. It's a growing pains problem. It's not a. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a growing pains problem of like we got to get there, and I'm fine with that. That's not a problem.
You know, I'm going to criticize not your idea, but that statement.
Sure.
My wife works in the healthcare industry.
My wife,
and she works dead next to me. This is our second bedroom, and she works not even 5 feet from me every day I'm home.
Yeah.
And the reason that, at least in her industry, and I can think many others, that something's expensive at first, it isn't really a make back your investment thing. It's because no one can stop you from making it that expensive because you haven't allowed anyone else to make it yet. Like it's almost a point of scarcity. So if I make a new drug, I can price it whatever the hell I feel like because I can. I've made back my investment the first 100 times it got prescribed. The drug does not cost, within reason, much more money to manufacture.
Right.
So you're trying to tell me that 10 years later, you still need a few $1,000s per dose of blank and blank drug that's still in the same capsule. And on top of that, probably costs less now to make because you've innovated past the early days.
With
it has
pharmaceuticals,
nothing to do with that. I believe that it is 100% our capitalist economy. No one's making you make it less expensive. Competition doesn't exist yet. That is how capitalism works. And let's be serious. You've mentioned Musk a bunch. I don't like the dude. I think his skin suit is malfunctioning. I think he's an odd alien with pyramid-shaped nipples and a very funny physique. But guess what? He managed to squeeze the government and get more NASA contracts than any other manufacturer, Boeing included. But he kept his end of the bargain.
Yeah.
That company, SpaceX, has hired some of the best engineers and software developers, and that's why they can make rockets land themselves.
Yeah.
Which is something unfathomable to people our age. So, like he's taken government money to run an entire company within reason and is paying the wages of employees on government contracts and subsidies. I have zero issue with that. He is exorbitantly wealthy and exorbitantly crazy. I don't care. His shit's expensive because there's nothing to challenge it yet.
Yeah.
And then as soon as all the US automakers started building EVs, maybe not as well, sometimes maybe even better, but they started making them and making them readily available. Oh, funny. A cheap one was made by Tesla. Who thought that was coming? You know, I'm criticizing not you, but the statement that that's why shit costs more is you're making back your investment. That was the original pie in the sky idea on why shit's more expensive at first. That's not how it works now at all.
Right. I think we should probably wrap up. We've been going for an hour and 10.
Well, when your producer and one of the regular hosts gets on, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah.
I have wanted to do the sign off for so long because I hear you guys do it every week. So here it goes. And I even wrote this. And that wraps it up for talking about the big stuff. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into universal basic income. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. This is just the beginning. Remember to like. Remember to subscribe. Remember to interact with this video when it gets uploaded to YouTube for all you watching now for the VOD later on. Thank you for tuning in. This is a passion project for us, and no matter how much money, even if we have UBI in the future, this ever makes us, we're still going to be doing this because we truly believe that talking about the stuff that matters is what's going to get it paid attention to, and it's what's going to usher in real change.
Great. And I have to follow that and say, if you want to support the show in a way beyond those likes and subscribes, you can go to either Apple Podcasts, and for $1 a month, you can get the episodes 4 days early. Or you can go on patreon.com/talking about the big stuff, where we have the same $1 a month option to get it for every episode 4 days early. We have a $3 a month option, which gets you some bonus content on each episode. And we have a $10 a month option, which gives you the most stuff. This
The
particular
most of the
episode,
big stuff.
this particular episode's not going to have a lot cut out because we don't have Matthew doing anything obscene. But still, there's a lot there, and it supports us. It helps us to keep making things better here. And since I don't think I can outdo what Alex just said. I
No,
think we'll just.
I mean, and that shows this is so much of a passion project for us.
Yeah.
Like, I edit every week, and I love doing it because I believe in what we're talking about, and to me that matters. So, folks, live viewers and those watching the VOD, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff. Have a great day, everyone.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.